Jonas had nothing left when the fire took his home. At 22, he'd carved out a small life in a mountain town. A rented cabin, a job fixing cars, a flicker of dreams for something more. But one dry night, flames roared through, leaving ash where his world had been. The cabin was gone, his savings burned, photos of his late mom reduced to cinders. He'd grown up lean, scraping by after her death, and this loss hit like a final blow, proof he'd never get ahead. Crashing on a friend's couch, Jonas drifted through days, job hunts, silence, nights heavy with guilt for not saving more. The town tried to help, offering clothes, meals, but their pity stung worse than the smoke. He'd stopped talking, stopped hoping, his future as empty as the charred lot he couldn't bear to visit. Before the fire, there'd been Rusty, a scrappy mutt he'd found half-starved by the road. Rusty wasn't much, matted fur, one crooked ear, but he'd stuck by Jonas, sleeping at his feet, tail thumping like they were enough for each other. When the fire hit, Jonas had been at work, Rusty loose in the yard. He'd raced home shouting for him, but the flames were too fierce, the dog nowhere. Neighbors said he'd bolted, scared off by the blaze. Jonas searched for days, calling into the hills, but Rusty was gone. Another piece of his life torn away. He told himself strays don't come back, that he'd failed Rusty like he'd failed everything else. One sleepless night, Jonas walked the town's edge, the stars sharp above. His thoughts a loop of what he'd lost. A faint sound stopped him, a whine low and familiar from the brush. He froze, heart pounding, and called Rusty's name, expecting nothing. A shape moved, limping, filthy, but there. Rusty, his fur caked with dirt, one paw bloodied, eyes bright with recognition. He'd crossed miles, towns, forests, driven by some instinct to find Jonas. The dog pressed against him, tail weak but wagging, and Jonas knelt, hands shaking, holding him tight. He didn't know how. Rusty had survived, didn't know why he'd come back to a man with nothing to offer. The fire had taken everything, his home, his hope, his sense of self. Jonas had grown up feeling small, unwanted after his mom's death, and the town's help only deepened that ache like he was a burden. He'd given up, ready to let the world pass him by. But Rusty hadn't. This dog, beaten by hunger and distance, had fought to return, his loyalty a light in the dark. Jonas didn't know dogs, didn't know survival, not really. He'd never been good at starting over. Every try had ended in ashes. Fear clawed at him. He'd lost Rusty once, lost his mom, lost his home. What if he failed again, let this dog down when he had no roof, no plan? Rusty's warmth, his steady breath, pushed back the doubt. Jonas didn't believe in second chances, didn't think he deserved them. But this mutt, scarred and stubborn, was here, choosing him. He decided to try, just for now, to clean Rusty's wounds, find food, keep him close. It wasn't a fix, wasn't a future, just a step. One he'd take with a dog who'd run through hell to find him. Jonas held Rusty tighter, the town quiet around them, and felt a spark, faint but real, that maybe they could rebuild, together, from nothing. If Jonas's loss and Rusty's loyal heart hit you deep, if you've ever felt like giving up, hit the like button now. It's a cheer for everyone clawing back, just like Jonas is starting to. Subscribe to join a community that believes in new beginnings, where stories like this show loyalty can light the way. Stay with us to see how a dog changes everything. You won't want to miss it. What's kept you going when all seemed lost? Share in the comments. Jonas's world felt less heavy with Rusty back by his side. The dog, battered from his journey across towns, slept close now, his crooked ear twitching at every sound. The fire had stripped Jonas bare. His cabin, his savings, his sense of a future, all gone. He'd been a kid raised on loss. His mom's death leaving him to fend for himself, and the town's pity only deepened his shame, like he was a problem to be fixed. Couch surfing at a friend's, scraping by with odd jobs, he'd stopped believing he could climb out. But Rusty's return, his muddy paws and loyal eyes, was a tether, pulling Jonas from the edge. He'd cleaned the dog's bloodied paw, fed him scraps begged from diners, and watched him grow steadier, though hunger had left him thin. Jonas would sit with him, talking low about the cabin, about his mom's old songs, about how he'd let everything slip. Rusty's tail would thump steady and sure like he didn't care about the ashes. Jonas learned his ways, how he'd flinch at loud voices, how he'd nose Jonas's hand when the quiet got too heavy. He'd scrounge for dog food even when his own meals were sparse, and Rusty ate, slow at first, then eager, his strength creeping back. That loyalty, Rusty's choice to find him, stirred something in Jonas. He'd given up after the fire, let despair win, but this dog hadn't quit, so why should he? He started small, fixing a neighbor's car for cash, saving for a cheap room. Rusty followed, curling up by the toolbox, his presence a reminder to keep going. The town noticed. Folks who'd offered clothes now stopped to pet Rusty, saying he was a fighter. Jonas shrugged it off, but their words stuck. He'd never been good at accepting help, always saw it as a debt. Rusty didn't ask for pity, he just stayed, and maybe Jonas could learn from that. Not everyone was kind. A shopkeeper, bitter about the town's struggles, saw Rusty and scoffed, saying strays were trouble, that Jonas was dreaming if he thought a dog could fix his mess. The words landed hard, echoing Jonas's fears. He'd lost everything, hadn't he? What made him think he could rebuild with no money, no home, just a mutt? He'd walk Rusty at dusk, the dog limping but stubborn, and doubt would creep in. He'd failed his mom, failed himself, let Rusty run off in the fire. What if he failed again? But Rusty would nudge him, eyes bright, and Jonas would breathe, the weight lifting just enough. He started asking around, looking for work, not just handouts. A garage took him on, part-time, greasy but steady. He'd bring Rusty, let him sprawl by the door, and the mechanics would toss him scraps, their laughs softer than pity. Jonas saved coins, sketched plans for a new start. Nothing big, just a room, a bed, a place for them. He'd take Rusty to the hills sometimes where the cabin's ashes lay, not to dwell but to face it. Rusty would sniff the ground, tail wagging, like the past didn't scare him. Jonas felt it too, a tug to move forward, not forget. The town wasn't perfect, jobs were scarce, whispers of his bad luck lingered. But Rusty's return had shifted something. A kid at the garage drew Rusty's face, taped it to a wall, and Jonas didn't tear it down. He wasn't ready to dream big, didn't trust happy endings. His grief, his failures, still clung tight. But Rusty's warmth, his steady steps beside him was a promise. He'd fought to come back, and Jonas could fight too. He'd talk to him at night, under a borrowed blanket, about finding a place, about being enough. Rusty's sigh, his nose pressed close, said he already was. Jonas didn't know if he could rebuild, didn't know if the town would let him. But each day he'd feed Rusty, work a shift, save $1, and feel the spark grow, one loyal step at a time, toward something he might call home again. Jonas felt a shift, like the air before a storm, with Rusty always close, his scrappy form a steady anchor. The dog's strength was returning, his limp fading, his crooked ear perking at every sound, but Jonas still carried the fire's weight. His home was gone, his savings ash, his confidence buried with his mom's memory. He'd scraped by on odd jobs, a borrowed couch, and Rusty's unwavering loyalty. But hope was fragile, easily snuffed out. The town saw him as the kid who'd lost it all, their help, laced with pity that made him flinch. Rusty's return had lit a spark, but Jonas wasn't sure he could fan it into a fire. He'd been taking Rusty everywhere, garage shifts, walks through the hills, watching him grow bolder, chasing scents despite his scars. One afternoon they wandered to the edge of town, Rusty sniffing the ground when a familiar face approached. Sam, the mechanic who'd given Jonas work. Sam had a dog too, and Rusty bounded over, tail whipping. Sam laughed, then paused, saying he'd seen Rusty's story online, a post from a trucker who'd spotted him miles away, limping but driven, like he knew where he was going. The post had spread, people sharing how a stray had crossed towns for his owner. Jonas blinked, stunned. Rusty? A story? Sam showed him the comments. Strangers calling the dog a hero, saying his run gave them hope. Then came the twist. Sam had more. A local shelter, moved by the post, wanted Jonas to bring Rusty to an event, to share their story, inspire. Adoptions. They'd heard about the fire, knew Jonas was struggling, and offered supplies, food, a crate, maybe donations to help him start over. Sam added that the garage crew was pitching in too, wanting Jonas full-time, saying Rusty's grit proved he was worth betting on. Jonas froze. He wasn't a speaker, wasn't someone people cheered. He'd grown up invisible, failed too often. His mom's dreams for him, his own plans, all burned. The town's eyes, even kind ones, felt like judgment. What if he let them down, let Rusty down? The shopkeeper's sneer echoed, calling him a dreamer with nothing but a stray. But Rusty pressed against his leg, eyes locked on him, like he'd run 100 more miles if Jonas asked. Sam clapped his shoulder, saying the town wasn't just pitying him. It was rooting for him. Jonas learned the shelter event was bigger, a push to rebuild after recent fires, to rally the community. Rusty's journey, his refusal to quit, tied to that need, showing what it meant to keep going. He didn't say yes right away, just took the shelter's flyer, his mind churning. That night he sat with Rusty, the dog sprawled across his feet, warm and solid. The hills loomed outside where his cabin's ashes lay. But Rusty didn't care about what was gone. He'd come back anyway. Jonas thought of his mom, how she'd tell him to stand up, try again. The shelter wasn't just about dogs, it was about people like him, burned out but still here. Fear gripped him. He'd never been enough, never known how, to start over. What if he stumbled, if the town saw him fail again? But Rusty's tail thumped, his scars a map of fights won. And Jonas felt it, a chance, not to erase the past, but to build on it. He'd lost everything, but this dog hadn't given up on him. He decided to go, to speak, not for glory, but for Rusty, for the strays still waiting, for the part of him that wanted to believe he could rise. Rusty stirred, nose nudging his hand, and Jonas held the flyer tighter, the town's lights faint, outside. He wasn't ready, wasn't whole, but he was moving, with a dog who'd crossed the world to remind him he was worth finding. The event wasn't the end. It was a door, one he'd walk through, Rusty at his side, toward a life he might yet claim. Jonas stood on the edge of the mountain town, Rusty at his side, the hills stretching wide under a clear dawn. The fire's scars lingered, his cabin's ashes a memory, his savings gone, his old dreams buried. But Rusty's return had changed the ground beneath him. He wasn't the man who'd given up, couch surfing through empty days, certain he'd lost it all. The town no longer saw him as just the kid burned out. They saw the man who'd earned a stray's loyalty, who'd started to rise. The shelter event had been a pivot. Jonas had gone, Rusty limping but proud, and shared their story. Halting at first, then steady, about loss, about a dog who'd crossed cities to find him. The crowd listened, clapped, adopted strays, and raised funds that got Jonas a small apartment, a bed for him and Rusty. The garage made him full-time, mechanics calling Rusty their mascot, his sketch still taped to the wall. Jonas had expected to stumble, to be the failure he'd always felt. But he hadn't. He'd worked hard, saved more, learned to accept help, not as pity but as a hand up. Rusty thrived too, his fur fuller, his limp gone, chasing sticks in the park where kids knew his name. The town had rallied, not just for Jonas, but for itself. The shelter event sparked a rebuild, funds for fire victims, a community garden where ashes once lay, a mural of Rusty on a shop wall, painted by Mateo's friend. Jonas helped, hauling dirt, hammering boards, his hands finding purpose. He'd see his mom in the town's grit, her voice in his head saying to keep going. Grief didn't vanish, her loss, the fire's toll, stayed etched in him. But it wasn't his whole story now. Rusty had shown him he could carry pain and still move forward. He'd started fixing cars for others hit by the fires, charging what they could pay. Rusty sprawled nearby. People talked about him differently. No longer the kid who'd lost everything, but the one who'd rebuilt with a dog who wouldn't quit. Jonas learned the town's fires had left strays too, and he'd help at the shelter sometimes, Rusty trailing, inspiring others to adopt. The online post about Rusty's run kept spreading, drawing letters from strangers who'd found hope in it, saying they'd started over too. Jonas pinned one to his fridge, next to a photo of his mom, not to replace her but to honor what she'd want. He'd walk Rusty to the hills now, not to mourn the cabin but to see the town below, alive with new roofs, green patches, faces that nodded back. Rusty would bound ahead, tail high, like the past didn't weigh him down. Jonas felt it, a strength not loud but steady. He wasn't rich, wasn't fixed, money was tight, doubts crept in. But he had a home, a job, a dog who'd chosen him. The town wasn't perfect, jobs stayed scarce, some still whispered of bad luck, but it was healing together. Jonas joined a fire prep crew, learning to protect what they'd rebuilt, Rusty waiting at the station, a quiet hero. One evening, he sat with Rusty on their apartment steps, the dog's head heavy on his knee. He'd thank him, voice low, for running those miles, for seeing something in him worth finding. The stars burned bright, the town's lights soft below. Jonas wasn't the kid who'd broken, wasn't alone. Rusty's loyalty, his fight, through hunger and distance, had pulled him here, to a life not perfect but his. He'd started dreaming again, small things, a better place, a trip with Rusty, maybe more. The fire had taken so much, but it couldn't take this. A man and his dog, stronger than their scars, building a future one step at a time. Jonas scratched Rusty's ear, the hills whispering possibility, and knew this wasn't the end. It was theirs, a beginning, carried forward with every wag, every day they faced together, toward a horizon they'd claim as home. Jonas and Rusty's story proves loyalty can rebuild what loss destroys. If their reunion sparked hope in you, hit the like button. It's a shout out to everyone starting over, just like Jonas did. Subscribe to join a community that believes in second chances, where stories like this light the way. Share this video with someone who needs a lift. Let's spread this strength together. What's a bond that's pulled you through tough times? Share in the comments.